Podcasts on UNCTV.org are made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
While the 112th Congress is in recess, North Carolina Now has extended invitations to our state's congressional delegation to talk with us about the work done during the session. Representative G.K. Butterfield of the 1st Congressional District stopped by our studios earlier today to give us his perspective. U.S. Representative G.K. Butterfield from the 1st Congressional District, welcome back to North Carolina Now.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, Congressman Butterfield, my first question to you is, from your perspective, how do you think Congress fared in getting things accomplished during this particular session?
Well, to be perfectly candid, I'm very disappointed with Congress's performance over the last few months. It's been nothing but rank partisanship, particularly in the House of Representatives, and I'm very disappointed. During the 111th Congress, when Democrats were the majority, we were a very active Congress. We got a lot of bills passed, and we met many of the needs of the American people. But for the last few months, it's been utter gridlock.
And of course, recently, one of the bills that was passed was the national debt ceiling being raised by up to $2.4 trillion. And you voted against the bill. Why the no vote? And do you think there's another way of lowering the national debt?
We had known for many months that May 16th was going to be the date that the nation would reach its debt limit. And so we began conversations very early with the Republicans to try to get ready to meet that deadline. The Republicans told us in no uncertain terms that they would not vote to increase the debt limit unless there was a package attached to it that would cut trillions of dollars in federal spending. And we urged them to keep those two issues separate. The debt limit is completely different from the deficit reduction goals that we have as a country. But the new Tea Party element in the House of Representatives insisted that those two issues be tied together. And so they were. And we finally found ourselves at August the 2nd, which was the absolute drop-dead deadline. And we were boxed in, and we had to pass some type of compromise package. The compromise package is a very disappointing piece of legislation. Not only does it increase the debt limit, which is something we had to do, but it also puts us in a posture of having to reduce federal spending in categories that are unacceptable to me.
And of course, health care continues to be an issue among North Carolinians, Americans in general. What is being done in Congress to ensure that Americans have affordable health care?
Well, it's been a couple of years now since the health care debate, but let me tell you, I'm very pleased with the outcome of the Affordable Care Act. It is the law of the land. It is online. It's going to really become active in 2014. We're going to make sure that every American who does not have insurance has access to affordable health care. That's a goal that we've talked about in this country for many years. And finally, in 2014, every American will be entitled to coverage. That is tremendous progress that the 111th Congress made happen.
Of course, education remains on the minds of everyone, and you're also needing to find ways to look for affordable education.
Well, I'm not
on accessibility.
I'm not on the education committee, but this is a subject that I care deeply about. We've got to get a 21st century education system in this country. Right now, many of our schools are not living up to our expectations, and it's not the fault of the teachers. They don't have the resources they need to have a 21st century classroom environment, and so we've got to invest more in public education. I've said that for years, and now that we are facing the challenge of reducing the deficit, education cannot become a victim in the budget cuts that we're going to see.
Congressman Butterfield, this year marks the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Do you think that the United States has done enough to bring to justice those who are responsible for 9/11?
Well, 9/11 will be etched in my memory for the remainder of my life. It's a day that I shall never forget. It changed America. It changed the way we do business in America. We've had to invest substantially in homeland security measures because there are people in the world, there are radicals in the world who would like nothing more than to take us out as a country. And so we've got to continue to pursue those who were responsible for 9/11. We apprehended one, the mastermind behind it, and he has now been tried, convicted, and executed. And so he's no longer a factor. But always remember that terrorism is still a real threat to America. And we're going to continue to invest in Homeland Security and try to keep this nation safe. Only 5% of the peoples of the world live in the United States of America. 95% of those do not. And many of those 95% who don't live in this country are not friends of the United States. They want to take us out, and they want to end our way of life. And we've got to make sure that doesn't happen.
And of course, redistricting is taking place, and it's affecting the 1st Congressional District. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's affecting all of us. Every 10 years, we have to redraw the lines, and the Republican legislature redrew the lines a few weeks ago, and it's very disappointing. Right now, we have an evenly divided congressional delegation. I think it's one more Democrat than Republican. But now the Republican majority just wants to use their new power in the legislature to have a 10-3 delegation, 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats. The lines that were drawn were politically motivated. It is a partisan grab for power in this state, and we're going to fight the congressional redistricting plan. We're going to fight it at the Justice Department and in the federal courts, and we will do whatever we can to get a fair map in this state. Under the map, the 1st District is now or Durham County is now in the 1st District. While I have great affection for Durham County and have hundreds of relationships in Durham County, I look at the totality of the map. And David Price has been displaced in Durham, and he's been placed in other parts of the state that are unfamiliar to him. And it was all about making David Price uncomfortable and other of our delegation uncomfortable. And so we're going to fight this plan. And if at the end of the day, Durham County is part of the 1st District, I will represent Durham County with honor.
One final question. There are a lot of challenges, of course, facing Americans these days, and some Americans are discouraged with government. Any words to encourage North Carolinians as well as Americans that things are going to get better?
Well, Mitch, let me tell you, one thing about hard times, people wake up and pay attention. And people who didn't watch the news programs years ago are now watching it very carefully now. And they're beginning to figure this thing out. The way to get things done in Washington is through bipartisanship. It's not through rank partisanship where each side goes to their corner and neither side is willing to compromise. But the American people are now beginning to demand Republicans and Democrats work together. And I can envision as we go forward now when we return in September that perhaps bipartisanship will become a good word in Washington, and we will get some good things done for the American people.
Congressman G.K. Butterfield, representing the 1st Congressional District, thanks for stopping by and talking with us. Thank you for your candor and for your service.
But time goes so fast. There's much more that I could add, but we are limited with time. Thank you for having me.
Podcasts on UNC-TV.org are made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.